Hi there, you're watching Grumpy Opinions. WandaVision is Disney Plus's flagship show set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Episode 8, previously on, starts out in ye olde ancient times when young Agatha is getting told off for being a bad witch by the rest of her coven, and by her mum, who they all zap her with magic. Unfortunately, it seems that she's been communing with some purple evilness because she manages to drain the life out of all of them until they're dead. Snap back to modern day, and the show picks up exactly where last week left off, with Wanda and Agatha in the basement squaring up for a bit of a witchy fight. Only it turns out, Agatha knows a bit more about witchcraft than Wanda does, and she's set the place up with magic runes that make Wanda's power ineffective against her, which is all apparently basic magic stuff that Wanda knows nothing about. So Aggie takes a lock of her hair, and that sets them off into Wanda's memories. Starting off when Wanda was only a little lassie and they were watching the Dick Van Dyke Show, the very same night that the bomb hits their house, killing their parents, and leaving her and Pietro stuck in the house staring at the unexploded bomb that she may just have magicked into not blowing up. Then on to the next memory, and it's when she's actually joined Hydra, and they're testing out Loki's wand on her, and she magically sorts of communes with the Mind Stone, with it bathing her in a yellow light and the silhouette of a strange female figure. But it seems that she also managed to erase that video somehow. Later on, we see her post-Age of Ultron, with her and Vision having a moment of open sharing, where he ends up talking to her about grief, and the pair first realise that they might have feelings for each other, and that reminds her that she wanted him back after he died. So zoom forward to the day when she got unblipped and she went to S.W.O.R.D base to find the body, and things are a little bit different to how Hayward described it, and he tells her that Vision's body has to be decommissioned as it's a dangerous weapon, and it's not like she can really bring him back from the dead or anything, can she? So of course she gets cross and tries, and of course can't do it. So heartbroken, she leaves and drives off to Westview, where there's an empty plot of land, and it turns out she has a deed from that in her and Vision's name. And she ends up breaking down and lets rip a massive wave of energy, creating the entire hex and her version of Vision, where the pair of them can live out their fantasy of being a couple in peace. And Agatha's like, okay, cool. And then Wanda hears the kids begging for help outside, and she finds Agatha in full evil witch mode, choking them with magic, because she's realised who and what Wanda really is.
The Scarlet Witch.
Oh, in mid-credits we see Hayward using the red wibbly drone from a few weeks back to power up the dead Vision body, and it opens its eyes because it's alive. It's alive! So what did I think? Well, this week's episode was actually genuinely interesting, straight up front, because most of this episode was essentially a two-parter between Elizabeth Olsen and Catherine Hahn, and the pair of them were doing really good work to make this episode really great. In very different ways though. Also in particular was kind of bringing out these big guns emotionally, playing everything super sensibly all through the episode. Especially stuff like the heartbreaking wee scene between her and Vision sitting on the bed, talking about grief and loss, and connecting on that emotional level. But there was also the whole "I can't feel you" line, which goes right back to Infinity War, and the whole thing about him only being able to feel her as she was basically killing him with magic to save the universe. And I love that we got to see some of Wanda's youth, and the tying up of how the sitcoms got into the story, how it represented this idealised life, and it was inextricably linked to both her parents and the happiest time of her life, and also like some of the greatest trauma in her life. And I thought it was interesting that we finally got the explanation of why that Stark toaster from the advert with the flashing light was a thing. How that was the unexploded bomb with the flashing light, and how that was obviously burned into her psyche through the trauma. And it was also interesting to see a bit of the Agatha history and some cheeky de-aging on Catherine Hahn to make her look about 20-year-old in the flashback. And also her draining all the witches, kind of reminiscent of that advert for the yogurt the other week. And as I said, I really liked the work being done here. And Catherine Hahn, yeah, she was playing things a little bit pantomimey, a little bit I am an evil witch kind of thing, but it sort of worked for the character. And we also finally got a bit more payoff on Hayward. I mean, yeah, the character's still a bit weird, but we can totally see now that he's really all about weaponizing Vision. And the scene where we actually now find out that the whole story about her breaking in and stealing the corpse was complete nonsense. And actually, he was trying to coerce her into reactivating Vision with magic, but that didn't happen. So she ended up just leaving, and then in her grief, created this new Vision. So he's obviously just trying to capitalize on that to get a second Vision, one that works, possibly. But I did have a few cribs this week. I mean, to begin with, the flashback about her back in Sokovia did have some issues, mainly because the kid playing Pietro just wasn't a great actor. I mean, I'm sorry kid, but you weren't very good in this. And the whole sort of English papa thing was just an excuse to have them speak English for half the scene, which, yeah, just seemed cheesy. And I hate stuff like that, it just seems naff. Also, shenanigans.
Shenanigans is like problem, but more silly than scary, but can sometimes be a little scary.
That's not what shenanigans means. In fact, I call shenanigans on your definition of shenanigans.
Shenanigans! Shenanigans! Shenanigans!
And, right, shenanigans means mischief or underhanded dealing. Like, read a dictionary, Disney raters, honestly. And beyond that, yeah, okay, it is a minor concern, but I'm sure some people probably really got annoyed by this. But this scene is actually completely different from the way this event was described in the movie Age of Ultron, where they gave this long, detailed explanation of the bomb going through a hole in the floor, how they were all buried in rubble, and as people were digging them out, they thought it would set the bomb off, where they're just sat there hiding, looking at it. Ultimately, that's not a huge deal for me, because, I mean, God knows, I watched my way through all the X-Men movies, and those are a complete mess of continuity that makes no sense and contradicts itself left, right, and centre. Also, although I did enjoy the performance, Catherine Hahn's lines did border on the edge of cringe, and the way that she looked all witchy right at the end, okay, it was just so over the top that, I mean, I know this is more tying into the Doctor Strange kind of side of things with people with fancy outfits and over the top performances, but yeah, I mean, the final line of this episode, it did read like something out of, well, a bad comic book, and I suppose that's maybe what it's meant to be, but I hoped for more. So that was it. That was the penultimate episode of WandaVision. And that means next Friday is going to be the big finale, and this episode, despite the brevity of this video, was actually the longest of the season so far. Although it really didn't feel like it flowed really well. I mean, it positively raced by. So I'm kind of hoping that next week's going to be an extended length episode, like possibly an hour long, just to tie everything up. And I am really hoping it makes a fist of it, because there's so many loose threads dangling here, and so many things that are unexplained, that I really hope they don't just leave hanging. I expect that they will leave some stuff hanging, because obviously they are leading into other films and other TV shows, but there's a few odds and ends here that just feel a bit scrappy and messy. But anyway, we will see. So till next time, you've been watching my grumpy opinions on WandaVision. And a special thanks to all my patrons, and most especially my top tier patrons Judith Coloma, Laurie Laporte, and Michelle Forbes. Thanks guys, everyone keep it real, keep safe, and take care of yourselves. Bye bye.